Welcome to the Profitable Franchisees podcast. My name is Tracey Leak and I am your host. This is the podcast where we bring stories and strategies to help you to be a more profitable franchisee. So welcome back. Our session today is just with me and we're talking about time management. Now, the first thing we have to understand with time management is, well, there's actually two things we need to understand. The first is you can't actually manage time. There's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can't magically add more time or reduce time. It's a finite amount. It's set. What we can manage is how we utilize that time. So really it's about personal management rather than time management. Now, the second thing to understand is that when we start talking about time management strategies, I always think of it a bit like a smorgasbord. If we all went to a smorgasbord to eat, we would probably attack it differently. Some of you might go straight for the dessert first. Others of you might get one big plate and never go back, whereas others of you might just get a little bit and go back 10 times. Some of you might just focus just on the seafood. You know, we all go differently to a smorgasbord and it works differently for each of us. Same thing when we talk about time management. There is a range of strategies. There's lots of books out there on time management. The trick is you've got to find the strategy that best works for you. And I'm going to share two strategies today that kind of cover a lot of it. You know, one is kind of very rigid and strict that works for people who like a lot of detail. And then I've got another strategy that's really great. Even if your time management is completely out of control, this will start helping you get back on track. So I am going to share a couple of strategies, but there's lots of different techniques and theories around time management. So just realize you might have to try a few different ones to find the one that works best for you. So really when it comes down to it, it's actually all about managing your priorities. You know, people with good time management know how to prioritize. They know where they need to spend their time and when they need to spend it. The other thing is when you're working, work, okay? I find a lot of business owners, they get caught up in the 9 to 5. They think they've got to do 8 hours a day. No, if you can get it done in 4 hours, then great, get it done. Most of the time we're taking too long to do things. We're not putting that positive pressure on ourselves to get things done. Because as a business owner, you get paid for the results, not the amount of time you spend. So there's this old folklore story. I have no idea if it's true or not, but it really explains this. So when you think about it, like go back in the old days, do you remember when I think it was like FedEx and they used to say if it wasn't delivered overnight, it was free, all of those sorts of things. Imagine one night, you know, they ship all the packages to depots, to centralized locations. So you can imagine that there's conveyor belts taking packages to boats and trains and trucks, and it's all moving. And one particular night, the conveyor belts stop. So you can imagine that would be costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars an hour for the conveyor belts to be down. So the night manager gets on the phone, he calls the technician who looks after the conveyor belts for them saying, hey, we can't fix it. We don't know what's wrong. Can you get in here and help us? So he comes in, he wanders around for 2 or 3 minutes, he taps on a couple of things, he walks to the center of the warehouse, opens a box, turns a screw half a turn, and everything starts working again. Well, the manager, of course, is like, oh my goodness, you've saved us so many headaches and so much money. Give me your invoice and I'll go into the office and pay it right now. So the technician who came in, he wrote out his invoice and handed it over. And the manager looks at it and it's for $10,000. And he goes, you turned a screw half a turn. That's not worth $10,000. And he said, mm-hmm. And so the manager said, here, look, itemize your invoice for me. So the technician takes it, he itemizes the invoice and hands it back. And on it says, turning a screw half a turn, $1. Knowing which screw to turn, $9,999. And I love that story because it really shows that it's not about the work you do, but it's about knowing which is the right work to do. So oftentimes we can get caught up being busy for being busy's sake, instead of actually being really focused and constructive. Now, I don't actually think busy is a negative word in business if it's a positive busy. You know, I've been really busy this year and people said to me, how's it going? And I'm like, oh, I'm really busy. And they're like, oh, that must be hard. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I remember a time in my business where I prayed to be busy. This is a positive busy. It's not just busy work for the sake of working. No, I'm actually doing things that are achieving things. So I want you to just stop and think, how much of your week is actually working on things that it's going to help you drive your business forward and keep it moving in a positive direction and working well? And how much are you doing that's just what I would call, busy work? It doesn't actually have to be done. It's not actually there. You're just doing it to maintain some sort of busyness because we think that's what we have to do. What we really have to get back to is priorities. Now, if you're at the other end of the spectrum where you've got too much, like you're doing 80 hours a week and you're flat out, I would start to question, how much are you actually delegating? How much do you trust to hand to your team? What are you outsourcing? When business owners are telling me that they're doing that many hours, usually, unless they're on a massive drive for something, sometimes you might be doing that if you're doing a 2 or 3 month campaign and you're trying to build it up, or you're in your first couple of months of business where you have to do everything until you have the cash flow to pay for people. But if you've been in business for a little while and you're over the top busy, I would start to question, what are you actually doing? And are you actually delegating well to your team? Now, delegation and abdication are two different things. Oftentimes, people will abdicate to someone else. They'll say, here, look, can you just take care of that? And they just shove it to them and say, off you go. So they're handed over something with no instructions, no outcome. They don't know what they're doing. They're just told to do it. And this is where it goes wrong. People think they're delegating because when you delegate with a system or a process, with training, with a desired outcome. They understand what needs to be done. So when you delegate, it works. But most people say, well, I'm delegating and it's not working. Well, that's probably because you're abdicating rather than delegating. Are you actually training people? Are you giving them expectations of what you want? Every now and then you'll have a task and say, hey, look, we've got to come up with a system and process for this. I'm not quite sure. So let's communicate and give me feedback on what needs to happen. That's okay, but that should not be the majority of tasks. You should be delegating things. And this is why people have trouble when they're actually delegating to team members or outsourcing things to people, is because they've actually abdicated, not delegated. So they lose control, which means they lose trust, which means the other person on the other side who you've delegated to isn't able to actually complete it the way you want because you never actually explained it. Now, yes, it's going to take some effort to turn this around. If you want an apple, you've got to plant an apple tree. If you want pumpkin, you've got to plant pumpkin seeds. If you want more time, you're going to need to plant some time to actually make this happen. So when we start to look at time management, you could be at either ends. You need to have a look at your time and go, am I being busy for busy? Where are my priorities? Or am I over busy because I'm not delegating tasks effectively to other people? We want to build the cash flow up into your business where you can easily delegate to other people, where you're paying them less than what it would actually take you to do it. You can go and do higher dollar value tasks. You can go and serve a customer, or you could work out a marketing strategy that could bring in a new 100 customers. We need to start thinking about replacing our activities with higher value activities and working more in that business owner level. But a lot of times when I actually sit down with people, I've come across a few, don't get me wrong, I've come across people who are genuinely busy in a positive way and they've got a lot on their plate. But I've also come across a lot of people that are not as busy as they think. I had a client who was telling me they had no time, absolutely no time. And then I just started talking to them about some things. I found out that they were watching like The Bachelor every single night. I'm like, okay, so that's an hour every night that you're putting to that. So you can't be that busy because you've got time to watch it. I'm not saying you can't watch it. Like if you want to watch it, go for it. But you're complaining to me that you're flat out and you're busy, but you've got time to watch something like The Bachelor. Okay, so therefore you really need to have that hard conversation with yourself. Am I being effective when I'm working? Maybe you're taking lots of hours, but you're not actually being effective in those hours. You're not going, hey, how can I get it done? So we have to start thinking about it. The other thing to work out is, am I procrastinating? Now, a lot of people think procrastination is a very negative thing. I actually see procrastination as just an indicator that we need to work on it. The reason being is when people are procrastinating on a task, usually there's a deeper reason behind it. It's not because they just can't be bothered, because if you just can't be bothered doing it and you're procrastinating on a task, you're actually lazy. That's not procrastination. That's lazy. Procrastination is putting off something that you know you need to be doing. And usually there's a block there. There's a reason why you're procrastinating. Maybe it's because you don't actually know how to do the task. Maybe it's you're not sure of the outcome. Maybe you're not sure where to actually start because it's such a big task, you're not sure where it fits. Or maybe you're not sure whether or not you should even be doing this task. I've procrastinated on some things, and then when I've really got down to it, I'm like, actually, I'm not doing this because it's not right. It's not right for my business. It's not the direction I'm headed. So when you find yourself procrastinating, ask a deeper question. Am I procrastinating for a reason? Is there a reason I'm procrastinating, or am I just being lazy? Okay. And it's having that conversation with yourself and working it out. Another trick to time management is to get organized. You know, Oftentimes, I think there's a study that says that people will spend, if they're working in an office environment at a desk, which is probably not the case for a lot of you, but just go with me with this one. They say that, I don't know where I read this stat, by the way, but they said if you're working at a desk in an office location, you'll probably spend about an hour every day looking for things that are within an arm's reach. So you're sifting through papers, sifting through drawers, looking for things. It's amazing how much all those little incremental things of time add up into a lot of time. So get organized. How have you got things filed? Where are you keeping files? Do you have all of your, say you're working on your local area marketing, do you have that all in a folder or a tub or a box? Really think about how, when you get started on a task, it's all right there in front of you. What can I do? Because as a business owner, you're going to have to juggle multiple hats, multiple balls in the air. There's lots going on. So really think about, how can you get organized? If you're going to spend some time working on something, be organized and have everything you need ready to go. When I was working on website, so I was building my website, I actually made sure I got all of the images sized, everything done before I even started building it. I had all of the building pieces in place. It's a bit like IKEA furniture. I don't know about you. I actually love IKEA. I am one of these weird people. I'm really great with a flat pack. You need a flat pack built, I'm your girl, all right? And people often ask me, what do I do? And I have a process and a strategy to build IKEA furniture. And the first thing I do is I actually lay everything out. I lay it all out and I have it in its numbered orders, because most of the time it'll have numbers, pieces 1, 2, 3, 4. So I lay them all out, including all of the screws, all of the dowels, everything else. I group them all together and I have them in place so I know exactly where everything is. Then I actually read through the instructions. Like, now when I say read through, because you don't read IKEA instructions, they're all pictures. I just flick through it and make sure I sort of understand all the steps. I like to know what's coming when. And then I start building. I focus on step 1 and I get it complete. Then I go to step 2 and get it complete. And so therefore, I have no issues building IKEA furniture. And I think the same thing in business. Oftentimes, we're trying to build in step 9 when we don't even know if we've got all the pieces, and we didn't even start at step 1. There is a system and process to building everything from IKEA furniture to a business. Make sure you're putting it in that right order. The number one thing that I see many franchise business owners doing that's so easy is they're just simply disorganized. And that's why they're running out of time, because they're spending most of their time running around trying to find stuff or do stuff or what needs to be done next. They have no plan. They have no instruction manual. An instruction manual in business is your plan. What do I need to get done in the next 90 days? What are my action steps? What am I working on? The other thing you need in time management is a really strong why. Why are you in business? If you have not yet read Start With Why by Simon Sinek, then I highly recommend that you need to read that. I think it's a must read for any business owner, Because if you can understand why you're in business and what it is you want to achieve and why you're there, then it will help you. Because every day when you're working, you've got that focus of what you're working for. This will help you to prioritize. In business, we said that we need to prioritize, we need to get organized. You need to know what is your why. Because when you understand your why, not only will it help you get through hard times, it'll keep you motivated in good times. It'll also help you to start deciding whether something is worthy of you spending your time on or not worthy of you spending your time on. If it's not getting you one step closer to your why, then it's probably not a task that you should be doing. It's not a task that should come into your business. It's very easy to get sidetracked in business, especially in a franchise. If you haven't listened to the podcast before, then you won't have heard me say this, but I say it all the time. One of the best things about a franchise is you can talk to all the other franchisees. One of the worst things about a franchise is you can talk to all the other franchisees, okay? So it's really easy to get sidetracked because another franchisee is doing something and you go, oh, I should do that. And you get pulled over to that when actual fact, it's not going to get you any closer to your why. It doesn't mean that it's a bad activity or it's not good for business. It's just not great for you to achieve your why. As an example, and I've done an episode on this talking about going into being a multi-unit owner. I've seen a lot of franchisees who get stuck and they go, well, I shouldn't say get stuck, but they get caught up in going into multiple locations. And so therefore they lose all of their time management. They've got no time. They're busy. They've got 3 or 4 operations. They're trying to juggle all the balls in the air. And the reason they actually got into business was to make X amount of profit and to have time with their family and their kids and to take a vacation every year and not work on Thursday afternoons because they take their kids to soccer training. And all of a sudden now they're working, 60, 70 hours a week, no time off, and they're stressed. When with just a single franchise territorial location, they were making the profit they wanted and they had the time they wanted. I've never been afraid of saying that to people. Years ago when I was first diagnosed, if you didn't know already, I have a tumor in my head and I'm okay. It's fine. It's all under control. In fact, it's totally shrinking. But when I first got that, what I realized to me, what was really important was time. So a lot of people come to me with my coaching business over the last 20 years and said, why don't you expand? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? But I've been really strong on my why, that there were certain things that I wanted to do that required time rather than money. Absolutely. I could have totally done the things that they were saying, could have grown my business that way, but it didn't fit in with my why. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Okay? You get that? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And this relates back to your why. So understanding why you're here. So let's talk about 2 different time management strategies. The first one is what I would call the very rigid, more extreme one that some people work great to, and it's called having an ideal week. So basically, you draw up a timetable of your week and you slot everything into the appropriate times. If everything's going according to plan, this is when you do these activities. So you might say, right, Monday mornings at 9 a.m., I do all of my admin, I do my reporting, I check my sales figures. Tuesday mornings at 10 a.m., I do 2 hours of marketing. On a Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock, I finish for the day because I'm going to go take the kids to soccer training. Friday mornings from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., we have team training. Think back to school, when you had maths at 10 a.m. in room 2 for an hour with this teacher. It's the same thing. It's basically a timetable for your business, and it's what you default to or what you do if all's going according to plan. Now, there's 2 tricks with this, okay? One, sometimes it can be a bit hard to stay to it. You have to realize that each and every week, there's never an ideal week. Things are going to change. But because you've got it in a schedule, you know where you can change things to. The second thing is do not fill every box and every time slot. Because I don't know about you, but stuff crops up every day. Every day you're going to get a random phone call or someone's going to need you for something or something's changed or happened to me this morning. I ran out of toner in my printer and I'm like, I'm going to have to go to Officeworks this afternoon. That was not in my schedule. By allowing a little bit of time every day and allowing some gaps, it means that you don't overwhelm yourself. You've got to leave some extra space in there for things that crop up. So that's kind of strategy one, is you can go to a full timetable where you schedule out your week. Now, what do you put in first? First of all, you put in the highest priority items that, they're often really important for the growth of your business, but they're not urgent. They're usually the first things you want to put in. So you think like marketing, reviewing your P&L, doing your goal setting and action list, having a meeting with yourself, doing team training. They're not the day-to-day operations of the business. They're the things that you would term as working on the business rather than in the business. Now, that's pretty hard to manage if you're coming from a place where your time is just out of control. To go to that extreme, some people can do it, but if it doesn't feel right for you, remember it's a smorgasbord, then this is my strategy that I use that absolutely works. And it's a good one if you just want to start taking some control on your time. And it's called a not negotiable hour. So you imagine in 1 hour, uninterrupted, so no phone calls, no emails, no one asking you for help. In 1 hour, if you were prepped and ready to go, how much can you get done if you're uninterrupted? It's amazing how much you can get done in 1 hour if you set that time aside and work solidly for that hour. Like head down, let's go, see how much I can get done in this hour. And by having it not negotiable, what does that mean? It means that you put it in your diary and it's a not negotiable time slot. Like you're not going to miss it. So first up, you're the only person who has to show up. So it's pretty easy to make sure that you attend that appointment. But it's not negotiable as in you don't swap it. Unless it's something drastic. Like I totally understand if, one of your kids has to go see a specialist or something like that. Well, you move the time slot. But in a regular week, you do not swap this time. It stays there. And you've got to think about it. If you had an appointment with a specialist, right? It's been set for 6 months. You've got to go see this specialist doctor and it's going to take an hour. Well, what's the likelihood that you would swap that appointment if you've had to wait 6 months for it? Very unlikely unless it was an emergency. Would you have your phone on in that appointment or take a phone call? Absolutely not. Are you checking emails while you're in that hour appointment? Absolutely not. Would the world fall down if you were uncontactable in a doctor's appointment for 1 hour? If your team knew that you were going into an appointment that you couldn't be interrupted for 1 hour, would they cope? Absolutely. All right. If they needed you, they'd leave you a message on your phone or send you a text message. So once you finish that appointment, you could then handle it. So why are we valuing that 1 hour with a doctor, but we're not valuing it for ourselves? Think about it. Why are you not valuing that 1 hour at that same level for yourself? Now, there was a couple of keys in there. Our team knew that we were going to be uncontactable for an hour. We put it at a time that actually works for us. If the busiest time of day when your team needs you the most is between 10 a.m. and midday, do not schedule your 1 hour of not negotiable time then. Put it at a time when it's less likely to be needed. I have a lot of clients who, they might need to get their team started in the morning. And so they do it like between 11 and 12 in the day because the team have got started. They all know what they need to be doing. And so they can then have that hour of time aside. And what I would suggest is you start with 1 hour a week. And this is to work on your business, the things that are important, but not necessarily urgent in your business. And you start with 1 hour a week. 1 hour is actually less than 1% of all the time that's available to you in the week. Less than 1%. Could you be disciplined enough to allocate less than 1% of all your time in a week to a focused slot, not negotiable, uninterrupted to work on your business? And once you get that into a habit, then you might start doing it twice a week, then 3 times a week, or even daily. Now, I don't suggest when I say twice a week that you've now gone from a 1 hour slot to a 2 hour slot. 1 hour kind of works really well. Like most of us will lose some energy after an hour. We get a bit distracted. We're not really working at that peak. But, putting 2 1 hour slots in, so it might be on a Tuesday and a Thursday. But this is a really simple way to get started to actually start taking control on your time. So it's called not negotiable time. Start with 1 hour a week, and then you might build it up to where you have 1 hour every day. And it's amazing how much you can get done in that 1 hour. And if you can't do this during business hours, like if, you're operating from 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 and you can't get it done in that time, then put it outside of hours once a week. Get up earlier in the morning and do that hour, or maybe it's one night a week on a Wednesday night you have that hour. Until you can actually gain control during business hours for your business, put it at some time. I love working on a Sunday afternoon. People think I'm crazy, but I love working on a Sunday. Why do I love working on a Sunday? Because I can focus on the things that I need to get done without interruption. Nobody's going to be calling me for, a problem they've got in their business. I'm not getting emails. I can easily turn it off. I can tell my family and friends that I'm doing some work. They're kind of used to me doing stuff on a Sunday now anyway. So oftentimes they'll call me and say, hey, are you working? I'm like, yeah, but I can stop. I can talk to you. Or no, I'm working. They understand that's what I do. For me, that really works for me because then I've got the week where I'm not feeling like if someone rings me, I can't take their call. But you also need to know that I don't work Wednesday afternoons. Every Wednesday afternoon, unless, there's always the exception, if I've got to go to a conference or something, but every Wednesday afternoon, I pick up my best friend's kids from school. Okay, I'm down to one now. I used to have three, okay, but the older two are now out of school, so I just get Harry on a Wednesday afternoon. And that's important to me. That's my one time of the week to connect with them. I've been doing this since, they started school. We've been doing it for years and years and years, where I pick them up on a Wednesday afternoon. It also gives Kate, my best friend, she knows she's got all Wednesday to work. She doesn't have to worry about her kids at all on a Wednesday. She knows that I'm going to pick them up from school and I drop them off before dinner. All right. So to me, it's not about, when I'm working, it's how I work. I've taken away that constraint of 9 to 5 and just go, how can I get the things done that I need to get done? And start to understand when you work best. So before we finish up, I want to just talk to you briefly about making sure that you actually have a to-do list and an action list. So when you do your business plan, it's not about the goals that you set, it's about the action list you come up with. But to also gain control on your time, having a to-do list will keep you on track. And I highly recommend that you actually write that out every week. I know we've got technology and we use lists and, you can use Asana or Monday and all of those things to have lists of things to do. But there is a whole power in pen to paper of writing out your to-do list. And I simply get a plain piece of A4 paper and I write out my to-do list. There's different ways you can do this. You can do what's called an ABC list. So in the top third is your A tasks, which are urgent or money-making tasks. B tasks are possible money-making or less urgent but need to get done. And C tasks are like admin. And so therefore you might work on all your A tasks, then your B tasks, then your C tasks, or you might work on a few A, a few B, and you're sort of categorizing them. I write out mine. It's very weird, but it works for me. In my top right-hand corner, I put any of my appointments that I have for that day. So if I've got to make a phone call or if I've got a coaching session, I always put that in there. Anything in the bottom right-hand corner is any personal things that I might need to get done today. It might be, I need to remember to call my sister, or I need to put a load of washing on, whatever it may be, but they're my personal tasks. And then down my left-hand side, I do my categories and I actually work through and I kind of do prioritize them of things that I start with things that I have to get done and then work my way through. If you're feeling overwhelmed and your to-do list is too big, then I suggest you do what I call a data dump. Just get out a sheet of paper and pen, write out as many things as you can you need to get done. Then get a second sheet of paper and go, right, what are the 3 to 5 tasks that I need to do first? And you write them on the clean sheet of paper. Put the first one, the data dump list, to the side. Put it in a desk, put it out of your eyesight, and then just focus on those 3 to 5 tasks that you need to get done. Then go back to the master list and grab the next 3 to 5 items you need to get done. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Sometimes looking at a massive to-do list will actually cause you to slow down, if not stop, because you're feeling overwhelmed. So a good trick for that is to actually put it on a second list. So there we go. We've talked about lots of different things with time management. Let me know which one actually stood out to you, but remember, time management is a smorgasbord. You're going to have to try a few different things to find the thing that works with you best. There's lots of different strategies out there on how to time manage, but really it's all about prioritization and managing the time that you have available to you. If you haven't yet, make sure you sign up to the Franchisee Profit Pulse. It's my fortnightly newsletter that's a great partner to the Profitable Franchisees podcast, where I actually give you valuable information, strategies, and ideas to help you to be more profitable in your business. And remember, if you or you know someone who's either a franchisee with a great story, or someone that you think that we would like to hear from, or someone that you'd like to hear from that maybe you want me to reach out to, that you think should be a guest on the podcast, come over to my website at traceyleak.com. Just go to the podcast tab and there's a Be a Guest form there. So you can fill that in for either yourself, someone you know, or someone you'd like to hear from. And also on the website, you can sign up to the newsletter. Okay, that's it for us this week, guys. Good luck with your time management, and I'll see you next week.